Sir, this conflict couldn't get any more ridiculous than it actually is right now. What are they doing? Why are they doing it? I don't know. And of course, I think that perfectly explains the geopolitical situation that the United States finds itself in. All of this as there are some major peace deals being negotiated right now between India and Pakistan and, of course, Ukraine and Russia. All of this as there's a lot of fake news, there's a lot of disinformation, there's a lot of fear-mongering and insanity out there, and we're going to cut through a lot of the jeering and jeeping and just absolute nonsense out there to specifically give you a bigger perspective to what actually is going on in these very complicated geopolitical grand chessboard moves that looks like they are being made right now in a very decisive way as Russia and China are coming together. And the Europeans just had a very surprise announcement for Vladimir Putin, as well as some very interesting investments by the United States, as it looks like the situation has now turned to a very dangerous scenario that we are going to be talking about in this particular video. Now, first of all, Donald Trump, clearly he is a man trying to, of course, cement his legacy as a peacemaker. Now, the first few weeks of his administration launching one of his biggest military actions ever against the Houthis definitely does highlight that the situation isn't as easily attainable as a lot of people were promised it would be. But Donald Trump has just signed a ceasefire deal with the Houthis. There's rumblings of Netanyahu being really upset with him, with Donald Trump, for not bombing Iran and other countries and acting as the foreign mercenary for Israel, as Donald Trump now is going to be embarking on a Middle Eastern trip that is going to promise, quote, lasting peace to a tumultuous Middle East. Now, will that be possible? It's going to be interesting to see what kind of deals he lays out with Saudi Arabia, as that's going to be the biggest kind of hallmarker of what a lot of people believe to be the new, quote, Abraham Accords that previously were implemented under his first administration. All of this, as I think the biggest kind of situation that a lot of us are looking at right now, is the situation unfolding between Pakistan and India, as Donald Trump announced on Truth Social that after a long night of talks mediated by the United States, I am pleased to announce that India and Pakistan have agreed to a full and immediate ceasefire. Congratulations to both countries on using common sense and great intelligence. Thank you for your attention to this matter, as some Indian news reporters didn't really see it this way, and they were kind of spazzing out because of the news that came in there.
But this is typical.
And the fact
Typical
that he's
Donald
and
Trump
the
here.
fact, Arnav, he's saying that overnight negotiations, while we had the worst of fighting between the two
Where are
sides.
the negotiations overnight? Where are the negotiations overnight? Who has mandated him to have those negotiations overnight? Last night we were pummeling them back after they tried to send their drones. Last night there were people in Firozpur who were, who were injured. Last night there were 36 places where they tried to do incursions, and we have hit them back. And in a ceasefire is not a phone call. It is not like one of those things that happen on WhatsApp. I mean, Donald Trump should get real about the situation. I will completely go by what my government says.
And Trump has failed for the 5 months with Russia and Ukraine.
But that's not the point.
He has announced 4 times.
Trump is too eager. Trump is jumping the gun, and I do not believe that this can be the kind of announcement that can be taken seriously as an announcement, and that's why I came on.
This, as a lot of people are saying, is there really a ceasefire? There does seem to be continued shelling that happened after the ceasefire announcement. It does look like there could have been some miscommunication that, of course, happened here. But overall, so far, it looks like there's still a lot of things to work out with this particular ceasefire deal, as the deal was allegedly made, and then bombs were, of course, flying from Pakistan, from India, and we're going after its territories, as there have been the use of drones, the use of artillery, back and forth skirmishes, and luckily it didn't escalate to a nuclear war, but the latest that we know that happened here is that at 3:35 p.m. Pakistani time, the Director General of the military operations reportedly called his Indian counterparts to request a full ceasefire. By 5 p.m., both sides agreed to halt all hostilities, land, air, and sea. India has just completed a final wave of airstrikes on Pakistani military bases, a deliberate signal of control before standing down. Indian officials confirmed the timing was, quote, strategic, as the Pakistanis are like, what the hell, dude? I thought we agreed to a peace deal here. And then you guys are, hold on, one more. We want the last word here, as there are other questions still remaining about the water treaty and the huge amounts of natural resources that Pakistan still is being denied by India, as India has decided to cut off 2 dams, 2 key water sharing rivers and pathways that India still controls. Will India acquiesce? That's going to be the most important kind of hallmarker, whether or not this deal will stand or not. Before going over and talking about the situation involving Ukraine right now, which is even more tumultuous, more insane, especially with the latest surprise announcement that we had this morning from the Europeans, we wanted to tell you about one of the sponsors of today's video, and that, of course, is Land of Biltong. BiltongUSA.com is the website. It is in our description, and it is awesome. Incredible products. If you like meat, if you like carnivore, this is your website. This is the place to go here, as of course biltong is a family-friendly snack, low in carbs and packed with protein, making biltong the ultimate health snack. Biltong is a great source of iron, also serves as a source of other essential nutrients, including magnesium, potassium, and B vitamins, fueling gains in every aspect of your life. Whether you're following a carnivore, keto, or high-protein diet, biltong is the perfect addition to keep you on track. Use code WRC for 10% off of your orders. And some of the best sellers out there are some good stuff that we have here surrounded all around me. Yesterday, I had a neighbor that just saw me kind of working my plants and my gardens and my trees outside yesterday. And they're like, hey, we got this like moringa magic healing tree. We're just going to give you some. Here, plant some in the front yard here. We have some in our yard. I was like, thank you. I really appreciate it. And then I was like, and I was getting to know the person, like, oh, I'm dealing with all these illnesses and sickness. I'm like, how's your diet? You should try some biltong. I went out into the fridge, got her some biltong, and she loves it. She loves the meat, and it's really great, true quality, very clean stuff. A lot of the things that you go get at the supermarket or at the gas station, horrible stuff. You look at all the beef jerkies, which is the most similar product to biltong here, and it is just a full list of like seed oils and all this nasty ass stuff, gums and preservatives and gives you the runs in the mud butt for a while. This stuff, top quality stuff. I really like it. I really enjoy it. And Anton of Biltong shares a lot of his life on social media. He shares how he makes the products. He shares his family's life as well. It's a great follow. Go follow them and go support not just us, but him. Great business, great people, really an honor and pleasure to work with them. BiltongUSA.com is the website. Go check them out and go support them. Now, let's continue on this conversation as, of course, hopefully the ceasefire and the water mineral resources are turned back on to India and Pakistan. By the way, lots of important resources in that specific Pakistan-Indian border that are probably going to be at stake here as well, as the United States signed a big mineral deal with Ukraine recently, as Ukraine wants a 30-day ceasefire. Putin does not want a 30-day ceasefire. Donald Trump also wants a 30-day ceasefire in the Ukrainian war, as the Russians are saying this is the perfect time for the Ukrainians to remobilize, to take a break, as we have them on the ropes, as we're defeating them slowly and surely in the Donbass region, taking more and more of their territory. If we have a 30-day break, they're just going to rearm. They're going to come back bigger, better, and stronger against us. And then this is not a situation that, of course, the Russians agreed to. The Russians countered back, saying, we are going to do a 3-day ceasefire. And the Ukrainians said, the hell we're not, as now it looks like the Ukrainians are trying to get the ceasefire and using it as a way to say, the only way that we're going to have direct talks with Russia is if Russia agrees to the ceasefire deal. That's what we saw. That's the ideas that's being pitched around here, and that's the ideas that are being implemented right now, especially with major European leaders coming to Kiev just a few hours ago, as we had Macron, Tusk, Merz, Stammer, all leaders from the UK, Germany, France, and Poland arriving in Kiev demanding that Russia accept a 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine, or else there will be more coordinated financial attacks and sanctions against Russia. Now, again, Russia is dealing with a lot of significant economic turmoil, but they are turning more and more to Asia. Asia is the important counterpart here that we're going to be talking about here in just a little bit here. But now we're finding out, as Axios is reporting, Zelensky, European leaders tell Trump they are ready for a 30-day ceasefire deal. As let's be honest here, the Europeans here have been the biggest kind of pushers and propellers of the continuation of this conflict, as of course they want Ukraine to do the fighting for them for a conflict that of course they see is going to be, quote, inevitable. And many European leaders, a lot of the leaders here represented, have been preparing their country, the UK, Germany, France, Poland, have been preparing their country for full-on military readiness of all essential services potentially going down, telling people you got to have 3 days supplies of food, of water, of medications, of batteries in case there are larger confrontations, actions that, of course, go directly up against us versus Russia, which, again, is a situation that could be likely. And this is a situation that we have seen slowly and surely escalated to this grand proportion of insanity that truly is, in my opinion, ridiculous. It's ridiculous that we are in a situation. We are in a place where there's talks of, okay, when the bombs drop, we're going to do it. When the bombs drop, it's all over. But this latest maneuver by the Europeans that they're trying to do here with this 30-day ceasefire is a gambit that's going to be very difficult for Russia to agree to. Because, again, Russia, looking at all the battle lines, looking at all the news and all the developments as it's happening, as they are unfolding, because I'm looking at the live maps of the troop movements, of the front line moving. Listen, let's just be real with ourselves. The Ukrainians are stretched thin. They do not have the manpower. They have, and they're doubling down on long-range drone capabilities in order to strike Moscow. The fighting on the ground, though, isn't that good for them. Now, if they're able to, of course, develop long-range kind of missile systems, say, hey, we won't do the fighting here. We'll do the fighting through drones and all these other stuff. If they're able to rearm and get a whole bunch of those and stop Russia pounding them and attacking them. You saw Russia attack a lot of places, not just on the front lines. The reason they're doing that is because the Ukrainians have a big war machine that is being activated and is being invested in by the United States. When Donald Trump cut off military aid and intelligence aid to Ukraine, he actually, his administration actually started to invest in the Ukrainian military defense industry, and an industry that has been working on long-range drone missile systems to strike deep inside of Moscow. Moscow does not want that to happen. Moscow is really pissed off after they found about this, and now they think, okay, the Europeans are coming here. They want a 30-day break. They want a 30-day break because we got them on the ropes, but they don't want a 30-day break so they can develop more of these long-range missile systems, and then they could threaten Moscow, and then they have better leverage here at the negotiations table during this, quote, 30-day ceasefire. And that's one reason, according to the Russian side, why the Russians are like, no, why should I do this? As, of course, Putin was giving this ultimatum, ceasefire or get crushed with sanctions. And again, people are saying this was a surprise move made by all these European leaders inside of Kiev there, as, of course, it has been initially Zelensky that said no to the ceasefire. Then Putin is saying no. And then again, Zelensky said no, and now Putin said no again. And it's just constant back and forth here. But right now, geopolitically speaking, when it comes to the military movements and everything that's kind of unfolding here, it is more advantageous for the Russians, in their own opinion, to continue this fighting and not sign this ceasefire deal. Now, Donald Trump said as soon as this ceasefire deal is signed, we're like almost 80% there to a full truce, to a full deal. The Russians are very skeptical here. And again, lots of previous deals here have been signed, have been broken. There's a lot of history going back here. And it is truly going to be very difficult for both of these sides to agree. Now, will the Russians agree to this? Well, the Russians are like, well, we got China here. We'll talk about them in a little bit here. But again, Ukraine clashed with the United States. The United States then clashed with Russia, and it's kind of a back and forth here as Donald Trump threatened to walk away. It looks like now Zelensky is willing to play ball. The Europeans are now setting up the standards, setting up the red lines here in a very interesting way without really Trump's involvement here. How does Trump feel about this? Well, allegedly he's supporting this. He has a very interesting Truth Social post that we'll talk about here in a little bit here. But as Reuters is saying, Trump, who clashed with Zelensky and briefly cut Ukrainian aid, is now backing the plan. The U.S. and Europe say if Putin refuses, they'll hit Russian banks and energy sectors hard. Putin's reply, a shrug. His spokesperson called the offer confrontational, and ex-President Medvedev told the West to shove it, literally. Meanwhile, Zelensky says the ceasefire must halt all fighting, land, sea, and air, but fighting hasn't stopped. Reporters say wounded soldiers arrived during Russia's so-called pause. And again, Reuters reporting is kind of dishonest here, as the Russians came to Ukraine and said, look, you guys want a 30-day? Let's start off with a 3-day one. Okay, let's see what happens during a 3-day truce, but we want it during our historically, culturally significant date of victory date, which was just yesterday. The Ukrainian was like, no, we're not doing that. And now Reuters is saying, oh, Putin wanted a truce, but there was no truce. I mean, yeah, because the Ukrainians denied it. The Ukrainians denied the 30-day truce. Donald Trump said previously he was disappointed with Russia countering back with a 30-day truce. To me, it would have been a sign of a good gesture to just say, okay, fine, 3 days, but then let's work towards 30 days. Let's show some mutual cooperation. Let's show some ability to be able to, of course, work together here. And sadly, we had none of that, as the European leaders came out and said, yeah, Trump's agreeing to our plan. We're setting the guidelines here. We're doing this. And it looks like Donald Trump has agreed to this, as he posted on Truth Social. Talks with Russia, Ukraine continue. The U.S. calls for ideally a 30-day unconditional ceasefire. Hopefully, an acceptable ceasefire will be observed, and both countries will be held accountable for respecting the sanctity of these direct negotiations. If the ceasefire is not respected, the U.S. and other partners will impose further sanctions. The United States already has significant sanctions against Russia. Here to threaten more sanctions? I mean, we'll see how that works. Thousands of young soldiers are dying on a weekly basis, and everybody should want it to stop. I agree. I do, and the United States of America does. Also, as president, I will stay committed to securing peace between Russia and Ukraine together with the Europeans, and a lasting peace it will be. The ceasefire must ultimately build towards a peace agreement. It can all be done very quickly, and I will be available on a moment's notice if my services are needed. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So he's backing the Europeans here, but since this is a European plan, I would say Putin would be a little bit more skeptical. If this was Donald Trump's plan here, I would argue that there would have been a better deal. If the Ukrainians would have agreed to a 3-day ceasefire, showed a sign of goodwill, the 30-day ceasefire would be signed here. The fact that the United States has been also quietly investing in these long-range drone missile systems that the Ukrainians will be using against Moscow, since they know they don't have the advantage on land, they need the advantage in the air, and drones are definitely one way of doing it, as the United States has been acting in a very interesting way here, as the United States has provided money, not just equipment, to Ukraine, especially when it announced that it cut military aid and supplies here. The drones are the biggest game changer here, by the way, as we have this article from Forbes. Ukrainian drones patrol a 16-mile kill zone. If you simply drive on any road, you risk your life. One Russian blogger warned, Russian jamming could blunt the Ukrainian drone edge, however. And it's a constant kind of back and forth technological kind of advancement here, as this truly is just terrifying forms of warfare that are absolutely despicable, horrible, and, in my opinion, absolutely unethical. Now, what's the Russians' response to all this? Are they going to say, "Yeah, we trust the Europeans now. Yeah, you guys didn't show us any goodwill. Yeah." Well, will they? Well, they are facing, this is the key issue here. They are facing severe economic problems. But that's why they're kind of repositioning to China here and expanding China-Russian relations. The fact that the Chinese president was at the Victory Day parade is significant, as they released a joint statement specifically talking about how the United States wants to expand NATO presence in the South China Sea. And undermine, quote, regional peace. That's the joint statement released by China and Russia. That's how they see it themselves, as this is a battle, not just against the Ukrainian territory and the proxy conflict that it represents. This is the East versus the West, the petrodollar versus the ruble and the yuan versus the energy resources that are at play here. As it's going to be interesting because the United States also is involved with tariff talks with China. China's significantly more involved here than a lot of people understand it to be, as there's Chinese soldiers now. A lot of people say mercenaries, but there's Chinese mercenary soldiers right now fighting on the side of Russia. Same with North Koreans. As this conflict slowly and surely could expand, unfold, and become a lot more unattainable than it is right now. And I hope that doesn't happen. If you agree, share this video. Support our sponsor. Get some good meat in your mouth at BuiltOnUSA.com. I love you guys. Stay tuned for more, all here exclusively on youtube.com/wearechange.